Hello, my name is Gochi Nwulu and I'm a Senior Programme Manager in the NIHR. I manage the NIHR Global Research Professorship scheme from our offices in Leeds. This video will hopefully provide some guidance on how to complete the finance section of the application form for this scheme, and it's targeted at those wishing to apply for this award, either for this year or the next, and it's also targeted at those providing support for applicants based in their organisations. So I'll be covering three main things. I'll be going through the finance and budget guidance, picking out the main points, providing an overview of the finance sections of the online application, and then I'll finish on commonly asked questions. If you want more information about the scheme or want to access the full guidance notes, then that's accessible and you can download that from the NIHR website. So in terms of the budget, the funding package that is available for each award is up to £2 million for 5 years, and it covers the salary costs of the lead applicant, the salary costs of the support posts, it covers the travel fund, it covers your training and leadership development plan, and within that you can access the NIHR leadership programme. There's opportunity to put in costs for a sabbatical or research visits or placements, and then you can put direct and indirect costs for host organisations and partner organisations where applicable. In terms of eligible costs for the professorship, as with all NIHR awards, it must represent good value for money. The research proposed must be aligned with the official development assistant eligibility, and there are specific details around that and what that involves in the guidance notes, but part of that is that the research proposed must be of direct and predominant relevance to improving the health needs and welfare of the most vulnerable people within low and middle income countries, so LMICs. We must be able to see the direct relevance of the costs to achieving the objectives of the award, and then there are sections within the application where you need to provide the justifications for the costs that you put in. Each university can nominate no more than 2 applicants to apply for this award. Please read the full guidance for those details. For applications where the host organisation is a UK-based university, the funds will pay for 80% of the direct and indirect costs. As with all UK NIHR awards for universities, this represents 80% of full economic costing. So that's 80% of the direct costs and indirect costs of the lead applicant, and for the 5-year postdoc support post if they're based in the UK. Where the host organisation and partner organisations are based in LMICs, you can put in for 100% of the direct and indirect costs. Just as a reminder here that you will need to check that your HER Research Institute is on our list of eligible organisations, as we have limited this award to organisations which have been a partner on an existing NIHR funded global health research unit, group or programme. This list can be found in the NIHR website. There are over 150 HEIs or research institutes on the list, but if you don't find yours there, or if you're unsure in any way, then please do get in touch with us to check. So these awards have a strong focus on research capacity strengthening. So in addition to research costs, we expect a large proportion of the costings will be for staff. That we ask that you include increments but not inflation. Any inflationary uplifts are at the discretion of the Department of Health and Social Care, and they no longer want those in the applications. We request that salaries are at an appropriate level for the skills, responsibilities and expertise necessary to carry out the role, and we may ask for a copy of the pay scales at the contracting stage were you to be successful. We'd ask that you include things like superannuation or pension costs, any national insurance type payments, any geographical weighting, payments where appropriate. We've said in the guidance notes in previous rounds that the award comes with a configuration of support posts, and we've given the example of having a 5-year postdoctoral researcher, a 3-year postdoctoral researcher, and a 3-year doctoral researcher. This configuration of support posts was set up when this award was just available in the UK, or for UK-based lead applicants. So we're aware that this might not work for each setting. So if you need to have a different configuration, so perhaps you want more master's level researchers or doctoral level researchers, then there is flexibility there as long as it's justified in terms of research capacity strengthening and justified in terms of how the research will be delivered in your setting and within your partnerships. As always, if you're unsure, then please do get in touch. In terms of splitting the costs of the support post, there may be some training costs for each of the posts and tuition fees. Where appropriate, these should be put in the training and development section. The salary costs, which includes stipends for studentships, should be put in the salary cost section. So in the training and development cost section, this is where funds can be requested for the lead applicant. Funds can be requested for their leadership and personal development plan, which includes formal one-to-one coaching. And we just put here that there's a distinction between formal coaching that's delivered by a coaching professional and mentorship. We would put in the full costs for the coaching program, but where you put in mentors or a mentorship team, we would pay for the cost of you travelling to visit with them or meet them. We wouldn't pay for their time. You can request costs for formal training for support posts. And then there are 3 scenarios in terms of tuition fees. I'll just run through those. Where the students are based and registered in a lower middle income country, the NIHR will fund those fees. Where at the level of provided, where students are based in LMICs but registered in the UK, we would expect for the home tuition fee level to be paid. So we'd expect for you to negotiate down the tuition fees from international student level to a UK national student fee level. Where this can't be done, we'd request some proof. Where the students are based in the UK, we would contribute to a max of £4,596 per year, and that's based on the Research Council UK tuition level of that academic year. When it comes to equipment costs, items purchased should only be used for the research or ODA eligible activities during and after the end of the project. So we ask that items not be used for bought for or used for commercial purposes, that they are used for research that's going to benefit LMICs, and that if it's a piece of equipment that's purchased in the UK just to be used in the UK and not linked to any relevant LMIC work, we would need the justification for why that equipment is needed. We'd be looking for any sustainability for potentially large pieces of equipment that may have a long shelf life, making sure it's sustainable after the project end date, because it will become the property of the contractor or host organisation, or a property of a potential partner in the lower middle income countries. And then in terms of level of detail, if there is an item that's cost £250 or over, for each item it must be listed separately. So you can group items together. So if you're buying a job lot of 100 heart rate monitors, for example, you can put that in one box, but you must make clear in the justification how many units that you're buying and the unit price, so that we can see that calculation. And that we would require for every award that an asset register is kept, and this will be reported on annually as part of ongoing annual monitoring of awards. Other points to note, when you're completing the application form, all costs should be at current prices, no inflation. All costs must be in pound sterling, and the exchange rates must be provided for all those calculations for your international costs or international organisations. The breakdown for all costs must be supplied. So where there are currency conversions, we would expect you to put the local cost, the regional cost, and then the currency, the exchange rate and the currency calculation. Organisations which are unable to reclaim value-added tax, VAT, should include costs inclusive of VAT. Otherwise, VAT should be excluded. We'd ask that you seek advice of the experts, financial experts within your organisation to determine your status. And then we would expect that estimates of travel, accommodation and subsistence should be done using the most economic ways possible. And for instance, that'd be standard economy class travel and standard accommodation. And then I'll just run through the Aramis system. So the Global Research Professorships is a single stage application. So that does mean that the full details of the budget and the sign off of the budget should be part of the submission. So it's not a two-stage application like other awards. So just be aware that everything should be submitted by the deadline. And for this round, it's the 1st of December. And the Aramis system can be found through aramis@nihr.ac.uk. So as part of this application, the lead applicant will need to add a relevant finance person as a participant for them to be able to view and or edit the detailed budget section of the application. So you identify that person, you put their email address into that section of the application form. The system will send an email with instructions on what to do next to that participant. They will then need to accept participation in the application. And when this confirmation process has been completed, it then allows the participant to see and edit that part of the application form. So all of this is broken down on the guidance if you need any help with that. So in terms of entering and editing the budget, if you're the finance signatory who's accepted the participation of filling out this part of the form on Aramis, you can access the guidance notes if you have not seen them already on the system, and you can download a PDF version of the guidance which will give you further detail. We'd suggest that you save on a regular basis. It's a very long form with a lot of different fields, and it can be quite a labour intensive process. So you can either save and close when you're finished, or you can just perhaps fill out a section and press the save button periodically after each section. There are budget summaries which will update as the costs are entered into the budget. So it gives you a condensed breakdown per year and cost heading, so you can check as you're putting in the costs with a running total or summaries. And then there are sections where you have to justify the costs, and these are mandatory. It's worth double checking as you're putting in each section that the costs are correct. You haven't had any data entry issues, or as we said, you can get a summary of the different section headings as well as the total amount being requested at the bottom of the page as you're entering the budget. And we just suggest to you that within your justifications and within your calculations that you're showing, you just make it clear to people coming into this independently how the total has been calculated. And that's just, just a suggestion. Because if there are any areas that we're not sure of, we'll probably come back to you after the submission, or if you're successful, we will check all of these costings with you during the contracting stage. This is an application system that's been set up for people to apply for funding in England, and there are some sections in the finance form which won't be relevant to global research professorships. So I would suggest, were there any questions around NHS costs, if you could just tick or click on the not applicable box, just so that that question can be ignored. But if you need to put in a response for any section that refers to NHS costs, then just please put in non-applicable where needed, so you can move on to the next part of the form. So as I've mentioned before, in terms of currencies, all the costs must be listed in pounds sterling, and for each organisation based outside the UK, we would need the current exchange rate information that's being used for your calculation. So yeah, costing should be done in local currency first, and then converted to pound sterling before entering into the form. We ask that you don't put in a contingency to cover exchange rate fluctuations, as this is something that we can look at the contracting stage, were you to be successful. So in terms of the scrutiny that the budget will go through as part of the application process, the selection committee will obviously be looking at the whole application. So they'll be reviewing the quality of reviewing the applicant, quality and the relevance of the research and the proposed leadership and training plan, but they'll also be requested to comment on whether it offers value for money. So as I mentioned before, you need to provide the right justification along the way to make it clear to them how you have arrived at your costs, and so they can then, it'd be easy for them to make a decision. And we would challenge any costs that aren't considered appropriate, or we don't consider to be offering value for money. And this particularly comes up at the contracting stage. So yeah, we encourage you to go into detail in terms of justification. Payments are made quarterly in arrears on the basis of the expenditure reported through quarterly finance reports, and funds will be distributed to the host organisation, which is then dispersed through to the partner organisations. And then we just say that you try to make the budget as accurate as possible in terms of when the costs will be incurred, because we will query if it looks like you front-loaded the spending of the budget, or if there's a lot of money left to be used at the back end of the budget. So, and as I said, we do have a quarterly reporting schedule, so all of this will be queried at the contracting stage and then monitored throughout the duration of the award. So I'll just go over some questions we get asked commonly. Some of these were taken from the webinar delivered last year, the finance webinar delivered last year, and some are from the queries we commonly get emailed, and some are from the guidance. So the first question, can the entry of the finance data be delegated to an administrator. Within the system, it is potentially possible that the lead applicant can enter someone as an administrator to enter the costs. But if that person isn't the signatory, we would then need to remove them from the system to put in the relevant finance signatory who could review that part of the application and sign it off. So just let us know if you run into any difficulty, but it is possible to put someone in who can put in the detailed budgets and then take them off and put someone who is the participant who will finally sign off the budget. Next question, will this call be issued again in the following year? We've been told by DHSC that they are happy with how this award has been separated from the domestic scheme. This used to be run by one selection committee, but it's now a separate selection committee from the domestic UK research professorship scheme. So there is the expectation that this will be run annually. Next question. Will this scheme be widened out to HEIs in LMICs that are not partners of the NIHR funded global health programs? We, when this was expanded in round 5, we used a phased approach to make this available to HEIs and research institutes in LMICs. We are continuing with this approach until you hear otherwise, so assume that we'll be continuing this for a while. And we have over 150 HEIs and research institutes that have been previous or current partners of NIHR funded global health units, groups, programs. And so we think it's a fairly comprehensive list, but if your HEI or research institute isn't on the list, then, or if you're unsure, then please get in touch with us. But yes, we'll be continuing this way for a while. Next questions so for a UK hosted application, are LMIC partners cost funded at 100% or 80%? So to reiterate, UK hosted applications, any UK costs are at 80% for direct and indirect costs. Where you have LMIC partners, their costs are 100% for their indirect and direct costs. Where the lead applicant is in an LMIC and all of the partners are LMICs, then all of the costs are 100%. All of the indirect and direct costs are at 100%. So next question is, if we can't include a contingency for exchange rate fluctuations, how should we deal with any major fluctuations? We'd encourage you to just use current costs and current exchange rates for your application and not to inflate the costs to cover any contingency for the rate. This is something we deal with at the time of contracting, because as you see from the timelines, from your application to contracting, should you be successful, it's around 8 to 9 months later. So there are some ways that we can address this at the contracting stage, and we'll be in conversation with you and your partners around the costs. So please, at the application stage, please don't put any contingency for any fluctuations. Our next question is, our institution typically increases the salary grade of the applicant should they be successful. Could we forecast the salary accordingly? This is only acceptable to do if the applicant is at a level below professorship. So if they're a reader or a lecturer, senior lecturer level, then their promotion to professor should include a salary increase costed into the budget. We would say that where the applicant is already a professor and meets our eligibility criteria, then we wouldn't accept a salary increase just on the basis of securing this award. It's where they've actually had a promotion in their job title that we would expect you to include the salary increase. So if they're at the level below professor, cost that increase in. So this question is, if we can't budget for inflation for staff costs, how do we cope with those increased costs year on year? The Department of Health and Social Care not included inflation for quite a while in costings, and in our experience, awards do tend to underspend over the 5-year period. So we do have a reconciliation process that where we look at any overspending on salary costs that we see that can be potentially offset by any underspends elsewhere. All of this is monitored as part of the quarterly finance reporting and part of our reconciliation processes. So use current costs, don't use inflationary uplifts at the time of application. This will be monitored across the duration of the award. So this question is around large items of equipment costing over £5,000 and if they can be purchased under the award. Essential equipment costs, including maintenance and related costs, not included as part of estates, should be put into the detailed budget breakdown of applications under equipment. And yes, within applications for the NIHR Global Research Professorship, the equipment cost cap of £5,000 does not apply, so you can apply for equipment over £5,000. The proposed cost of all equipment to be purchased needs to be fully justified and should be seen as being value for money, so you must put in the justification. And we may challenge proposed costs where it's not considered appropriate or where we think it doesn't offer value for money. So yeah, there are other aspects to this, the equipment costs that can be found in the guidance document around equipment being bought in the NHS. We don't allow NHS equipment costs to be included, and then things around the cost of computers, and there's a cost cap for each computer. Again, as with everything, justify, and if you have any queries, please do get in touch. So this question is around what we consider value for money within the NHR, and we consider something's value for money as being the optimal use of resources to achieve the intended outcomes, and it goes beyond the achieving the lowest initial price, and we'd ask you to consider things around economy, efficiency, effectiveness and equity where appropriate, and what that means in the context of your Global Research Professorship application. And again, we would challenge proposed costs where we don't consider it appropriate or we don't consider it offering value for money. And one example we always use for this is around business class travel, where economy can be used, but there are more details around this in the guidance notes. Thank you very much for watching this video, and we hope you found this useful. If you have any queries, please do get in touch. This can be on the finances, it can be on any other aspect of the scheme or your application, or if you have any issues with Aramis, the online online application, please do get in touch with us. Our number is there. You can email us on academyawards@nihr.ac.uk. The full guidance notes, including the sections on the Finance and Budget can be found at nihr.ac.uk. Many thanks and good luck with your application.